Hey guys, it's Caroline from the Juniper Links accounting channel. Today we're going to go over the use of home allowance for limited company directors, and I'm going to show two different calculations you can actually use to make a fair claim from your own limited company to go towards your working from home costs. So without further delay, let's get started with the video.
Okay, so we are in my computer and we're going to have a look at working from home and reclaiming these costs from your limited company. So, as a company director, what you can actually reclaim from your own company and do it fairly, where HMRC would also be happy with what you're doing. Okay, so what is the use of home allowance? This is essentially a working from home allowance for limited company directors, and it allows you to reclaim some of your costs without the need for receipted evidence. So the actual use of home allowance that they provide you, all you need to do is simply show that you do spend some time working from home. And that's pretty much it. So you can either reclaim £4 a week up to the 5th of April 2020, and then they'll increase this to £6 per week from the 6th of April 2020. So you can now, going forward, simply claim £6 a week towards your working from home costs. However, with the current situation, as you may be aware of, with COVID-19 and everything that's happening, a lot of people are having to spend a significant time working from home, which they would have otherwise maybe not spent so much time. So let me just highlight, so £6 a week now. And basically, the £6 a week isn't really going to cover your working from home costs when you're spending pretty much all of your time working from home where possible. Obviously, some people won't have this issue, but if you are someone like a software developer, a web developer, or even a graphics designer, then you would probably spend a good amount of time from home. Because of this, you may want to look into some alternative options of actually calculating this use of home allowance. What if you spend more than the £6 a week on your utility bills for business specific purposes? So what you can actually do is create a custom calculation. And the important thing is with the custom calculations is to make sure that they're done fairly. So you have to be able to show this calculation to HMRC, and they should be like, yes, that makes sense. It's fairly apportioned for the business element of your utility bills, and that's no problem. So there are a few guidelines to follow, which I am going to go through in this video, and also give you specific examples on how you can actually calculate this use of home allowance. So only utility bills are allowable for a very good reason. Your rent costs, even though you are working from home, there are certain fixed costs that would not change regardless of what's happening in your house. So you could be spending all of your time at home, you could be spending almost none of your time at home, and these costs will not change whatsoever. Obviously, they can change for other reasons, but that's not related to actual usage. The only type of bills that are allowed in this case for the use of home calculation are your actual utility bills, so things that you use up in the process of living somewhere or working from your home. In this case, gas, electricity, or water. So you must have relevant receipts as evidence, and this is quite easy because you just need your utility bills for that. So the calculation should also be saved to show the fair apportionment. So in case HMRC ever needed evidence of your use of home allowance calculations, then you've got them and you can clearly show how you worked out. And yes, finally exclude things like council tax and rent. They're fixed costs that don't change regardless if the company existed. So they're not really something we can include in this circumstance. The first example we're going to look at is a simplified calculation. So this is going to work really well if you're just using a small space for your home office, like for example, part of a bedroom, or if you actually have like a home office room in your house that's not really practical as a bedroom because it's too small. The simplified calculation is a case of counting all the living spaces in your home, excluding hallways and bathrooms, because HMRC's guidance is that they should be living spaces. So a space that you actually spend time in to do something, like a kitchen, a bedroom, or a living room. We would simply count all the living spaces in your home. And you can number them or however you want to account for them. But basically, you want to find out how many you've got. So let's say you've got 2 bedrooms, and a living room, and a kitchen. So in total, you've got 4 living spaces in your home, essentially. The next step is to calculate the amount of time spent in each room for business to allocate a percentage to that room. So what I mean by that, let's say you spend 3 hours in the living room for business purposes, and the total time you spend in the living room per day is 5 hours. So that is essentially 3 out of 5, which is 60%. So you can say that 60% of your living room is being used for the business. You can average this out over a month's time if your bills are monthly. So for example, you spend 2 to 3 hours a day in the living room and you spend a total of 5 to 7 hours a day for everything. So including the business, including personal use. And you can kind of use an averaged amount for those. But let's say 60% is a fair estimate for the living room. And let's say one of the bedrooms you use 1 hour a day, but you spent 5 hours in that room. So that bedroom would be 20%. So now you've got these 2 rooms, each one with a percentage associated to them for business purposes. And the next step is to essentially work out the cost per room based on your bills. So you would divide each bill cost by the number of rooms in your home to work out the per room price. So we know we've got 4 rooms, so we would divide each of these bills by 4. And obviously you can add them all together and divide them by 4 because it'll essentially give the same result. However you want to do that is fine. Let's say the total combined for all of these was £150, and we've got 4 rooms, so we divide that by 4. So each room's price is £37.5 per month. So this is what we will use in the final step. So here we go, this one here. Multiply the per room price, so this value here, by the business percentage for each room from step 2. So in that living room where we've got 60% and the bedroom where we've got 20%, we would do these 2 calculations. So 60% of 37.5 is 22.5 and 20% is 7.5. The total of these 2 numbers here, so the total usage in your house for business use out of your monthly bill is £30 per month. And if we divide that by 4 weeks, it's about £7.5 per week. So it's slightly more than the use of home allowance. And this is kind of how you can get a very simple calculation where your room is small and it makes sense to do it this way. Obviously, if you're using rooms that are very large in your home, so you're spending a significant amount more from your utilities towards those rooms because they're much bigger, this calculation is not going to be very accurate for you. In that case, I have also a more advanced calculation that we can do, and this one is going to be done based on floor space. So to work out the use of home allowance based on your home's floor space, first we need to find out what the floor space of each living area in your home is. Again, we would need to work out the living room and the 2 bedrooms and the kitchen from the last calculation and what each of their floor spaces are. And depending on their floor spaces, you would essentially take, so let's say the floor space of each room is X, Y, Z, A, X, Y, Z, and A. So this is the living room, this is the bedroom, this is the bedroom, and this is the kitchen. So these are what they're associated with. I will try to be as clear as possible, but this one's a little bit more detailed, so as you can imagine, there are more elements going on here. And all you need to do, and let's say the total combined amount of your home's floor space is going to be called C. Once you work out the total of the floor space of all these 4 rooms combined, so just simply add the floor spaces together to find the total, you would want to take each of these rooms, X, Y, Z, and A, out of the C total. So you would divide it. So for example, if you want to take the living room X out of the total floor space of these 4 rooms, which is C, this will give you a percentage of that specific room out of your entire home. And that percentage is what we can use to work out the cost per room based on the utility bill price. you'll want to do this for every single room you've got. So Y out of C, Z out of C, and A out of C. Obviously, you're only using one bedroom and the living room, which means you don't have to worry about these two over here. But for the sake of an example, if you did use those rooms for it, then you would want to work out the percentage or the ratio. Basically, you'll portion the bills against these floor spaces. A second step is to calculate the time spent in each room for business versus total time spent per room. So this is exactly the same as the previous calculation. We basically want to come out with a percentage per room for business use. So let's say it was again the same thing where you had 3 hours out of 5 in the living room and 1 out of 5 in the bedroom. So that gave us a 60% amount and a 20% amount. The rest of the rooms are nothing, so we can just exclude them. Divide the utilities bills by your room's floor space ratio. And this is where I was referring to earlier, is these amounts of the floor space out of the total floor space will give you a ratio. And each of these ratios will be used to calculate how much each room costs from the utility bills. Let's say again, our utility bills are a total of £150. And let's say, I'm going to write this up top here, X equals, so living room is going to be 20 meters squared. The bedroom that you use, let's say it's Y, is going to be 10 meters squared. Let's say the total, that C value that I was mentioning earlier, is, so let's say the second bedroom is also 10 and the kitchen is like 15. Got a bigger kitchen, okay, roughly. I'm not sure if these are very good room sizes, but I'm just doing this for the sake of a calculation. So 20 plus 10 plus 10 plus 15. So the total square footage of your area home is 55 meters squared. Very small space we're living in. So, yeah, that's the total floor space. So since we're dealing in meters squared all across the board, you can just kind of consider that not a factor in this calculation. So essentially it's going to be 20 out of 55 and 10 out of 55. So 20 out of 55 equals 36%, and 10 out of 55 equals 18%. So these are the two percentages that you're now going to use to work out the cost per room based on floor space instead of number of rooms. Okay, so if we take 36% of 150, that's going to be £54. So that's the 36% amount there. And if we take 18% of 150, it's £27. Okay, so now we've got the cost per room, and in the previous calculation, the cost per room was £37.50. So as you can see, we've got kind of a split here. So it's 54 and 27 in this case. So 54 plus 27 divided by 2. The average is about £40.50 per room. Now, the final stage is to multiply the business percentage from step 2 by the utility bill cost per room. What that means is we take that £54 for the living room and we multiply that by 60% for business use specifically. And this is £32.40. And then we take the bedroom cost of £27 and multiply that by the 20% from step 2. And this gives us £5.40. And these two combined give us a total use of home price for the month of £37.80. So let's compare with the previous calculation. Yep. So the previous calculation was £30. And in the more detailed calculation, we're using bigger room spaces and sizes. It's £37.80. So you get a little bit more towards your use of home cost that way. And it works out roughly £9.40 per week. Again, if you are using the bigger rooms in your house and the per room cost isn't really working out for the simplified calculation because it's not really a fair representation of what is actually happening in your home, feel free to use this detailed calculation because it will be more exact based on the spaces in your home. And again, you can exclude things like hallways and bathrooms because it's supposed to be a living space according to HMRC, so where you actually spend time. And who knows, maybe you just spend loads of time in the bathroom. So maybe you want to include that depending on what you're doing. Maybe you're running a plumbing channel or something on YouTube and you spend a lot of time filming your bathroom, so you might want to include that. So yes, this is the more detailed calculation. It is a bit more steps, but it's essentially the same as the first one. We're just using floor space instead of the number of rooms in your home. Other home office expenses is something else I wanted to mention. So not only do you get to claim the use of home allowance, and this is only for limited company directors, these other home office expenses are essentially available to all employees. If you paid for those personally, you can reimburse the exact cost because you're also the director of the company. You also buy things for yourself. So if it didn't come from the business account itself, let's say you got a discount because you used like a specific credit card, then obviously you're saving your company money that way. So that's completely okay. It's more like where employers provide allowances for their employees to buy things themselves when it creates actual income and tax liabilities on that extra income. So the easiest way is just to simply reimburse yourself for the exact amount you paid for them. And other examples of these sorts of things can be coffee machines, headset for phone calls, a web camera, streaming software, Skype or Zoom, subscription fees, or even purchasing like Skype call times, cameras, microphones, stationery, printers, camera mounts. All of those sorts of things are allowable expenses to your business in a home office setting. And these are not just lumped in with the use of home allowance. These are their own kind of expenses. They're essentially equipment for your company to use. And in some cases, bigger purchases like a computer, for example, let's say you spent £1,500 on a computer, this would be considered a company asset and they're accounted for slightly different, but you can ask your accountant how to do that before you buy one. Because if you are on the flat rate scheme, for example, there's one circumstance where you can actually reclaim VAT from your computer equipment purchase, and that's if it's £2,000 or more. Including VAT, so it's roughly £1,667 plus VAT, and it's all on one receipt, then in that circumstance you can actually reclaim the VAT on that purchase. Obviously, if you're standard rate VAT registered, then you can just reclaim costs based on the VAT you actually spent on everything, so it doesn't really matter. But for the flat rate scheme, where you can only use a percentage of your invoicing to work out what you owe HMRC, then it's only the asset purchases that are £2,000 or more, all in one receipt, and you've got a valid VAT receipt for those purchases. So in that circumstance, you can actually save a bit of money by reclaiming the VAT. Basically, just use common sense. So most expenses that you could reasonably justify to HMRC would be allowable. And finally, something I wanted to mention about home offices, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion here. It's not recommended, funnily enough, it's not recommended to use your home office only for business activities where you have a specifically designated room and you only use it for business and then you close it off and you never use it for anything else. This can create some problems with tax relief, and if it's in your own home, for example, you own a house, this could impact the residential tax relief you get when you're selling a property, because you were essentially hiring out a business premises on your property, and that is going to be different tax-wise than a residential area. So if you do have a home office, we would recommend at least using it somewhat for recreational activities after the fact of you being done with business. So let's say you've got certain hours that you work, or you just work there sometimes, and then you decide to watch Netflix or play a game or, I don't know, call your mother. So you can do all of these things as recreational time from your home office, but because of that, it's not anymore just a business premises. Similarly, council tax could be affected by having a business premises within your home or garden. So let's say you built a shed in your garden and you're using that as an office specifically to carry out your business. This could create problems, not to mention the fact that are you even allowed to run a business from your garden in that specific area, because they do have zoning issues that could take place, and people could complain essentially to the council and they'll be like, you can't do that. If you do have a home office space, feel free to use it for other things as well. That's actually good. It's actually a good thing to do that, because then it's no longer causing these interesting tax implications, which are kind of outdated for the current times, but that's a different topic altogether. So again, if you're renting a house, then landlords may have similar issues regarding the residential tax relief, also zoning problems, you know. The final point I wanted to make is renting a home office space to your company creates additional personal income tax. And what I mean by this is if you had a rental agreement set up between yourself and your company, and you're renting a room in your home to your company, again, not only does it cause all the residential tax relief issues upon selling a property, or zoning issues, or council tax, not only does it affect all of those, but now you're also receiving personal income from this room, and you wouldn't be able to claim the rent to room relief because you're renting it to yourself, and it's a business as well you're renting it to, it's not even a person. So you don't get any special tax release for that, and we'll just have to add it to your regular income on your self-assessment, which you'll be taxed on just like anything else, so a 20% lower rate and 40% the higher rate. And also push your dividends up into the higher rate bracket, so higher rate tax bracket, sorry. So it's just not really any benefit in doing this. Feel free, of course, to claim the use of home allowance, because that's not a form of income, simply a reimbursement of your costs. And feel free to also pay for your actual expenses that you had to buy to kit out your home office in order for your business to carry on its activities. And again, that's just an expense reimbursement. There's no form of income that you're receiving from that. So renting a home office space to your company, sure, your company gets to get the tax relief off that, but how is that affecting you personally? Like, is it going to create issues with your residential tax relief? Is it going to increase your council tax you have to pay? Are you even allowed to do that because the property is in a location that's not allowed to have any other purpose other than just residential space? You know, there's all these other factors that are at play, and it doesn't even benefit you from a tax perspective, because you're going to have to pay that personal income tax on it anyway. And I think that pretty much wraps up this video. If I did leave anything out, or if you've still got some questions left over, then feel free to comment down below and I'll try to get back to you. If you're simply interested in seeing more videos like this and enjoy the content I'm putting out, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to hit the like button if this video was helpful. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.